Hello Magic fans, I'm Beef and welcome back to another timeless gameplay video, this time featuring a Grief Scam deck. So for those who don't know, I think in Modern Horizons 2 they released a cycle of 5 elemental incarnations, one for each colour, and they all have ETBs of varying power from target player puts their graveyard on the bottom of their library to deal 4 damage split any way you choose between any number of creature or planeswalkers, to Grief, which is when Grief ETBs, target opponent reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card for it, that player discards that card. So it's essentially a Thoughtseize without you losing 2 life. Now what makes them really powerful is they all have Evoke, which means you can exile a black card from your hand. You exile a card of the appropriate colour, so for Grief it'll be black from your hand, and then when ETBs, you'll get the ETB trigger, but then you sacrifice it straight away. And the scam part of it comes from ways to stop that happening. So we are mostly a mono black deck, and the ways we have to stop it happening are Feign Death, Malakir Rebirth, Not Dead After All, Undying Malice. They all have, until end of turn, target creature gains. When this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped on its owner's control. And all of them, apart from Malakir Rebirth, has put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. Not that after all, it's a Wicked Roll token, but it is a +1, but it gives it +1/+1. So if you play Grief, then play one of these instants, when you sacrifice Grief, it will come back. And most of the time, it will come back as a 4/3. Having a 4/3 menace on turn 1 is incredibly powerful, and you've got into their hand twice, taking their 2 best cards. We've also splashed white for Ephemerate, which does something very similar. It says exile target creature you control, then return to the battlefield under its owner's control. But it also has Rebound, meaning at the beginning of your next upkeep, you can cast it without paying its mana cost. So while you won't get any counters on Grief, and it won't be able to attack on turn 2, you can get that ETB trigger 3 times with just 1 card. There is something very important to note, and I found out the hard way in one of the first games I played. Arena doesn't put a stop naturally between the Grief trigger and you taking the card and the sacrifice trigger. So what you need to do is when you play Grief, when it ETBs, push control to go into full control mode, and then target the player, and then at first opportunity when you can cast an instant, cast your instant. Otherwise you'll just sacrifice Grief and you won't get it back. The other thing to note is mulligan until you get Grief, one of these in the opening hand. Sometimes it's not worth it on the basis that if you've mulliganed to say 5, or even 4, you need 4 cards in your hand for it to work. 1 land, a Grief, one of the Rebirth cards, and something to pitch to Grief. But if you go down to 4, you're going to end up with nothing in your hand. And even if you've taken 2 of their best cards, your opponent's probably going to go, well, they've got no cards left. There's no point scooping. So just be aware of that. So rounding out the deck as well, and this deck is not meant to be serious. This deck is not meant to be competitive. This is just a fun deck built very quickly to see if we can Grief Scam opponents. So rounding out a deck, we have 4 copies of Dark Ritual, and this is basically so we can cast Sheoldred on turn 2. If you have Dark Ritual and Sheoldred in open hand, but no Grief, it might be worth keeping. A turn 2 Sheoldred is obviously very powerful, and then you might even be able to protect her with our Feign Death type spells to stop your opponent being able to kill her. 4 copies of Fatal Push to kill small creatures. Then Abstruse Appropriation is a new card from Modern Horizons 3. It is 2 white and black, but it's a void, so it doesn't have any colour. Exile target non-land permanent. You may cast that card for as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend colourless mana as well as mana of any card to cast that spell. Didn't actually get to cast this in any of the games we played, but it's still quite a powerful card, and we'd like to see what it can do. And then 3 copies of Dismember, which is in Modern Horizons 3. Target creature gets -5/-5 to end the turn, but the key thing is it's 1 and 2 Phyrexian black, so you can pay 4 life and pay 1 colourless, or play 2 life and pay 2 mana, or pay all 3 mana, so it can come out of nowhere. Plus I want to be able to have the opportunity to say that was a dismember to remember if I cast it while and it's a game changing cast, but that hasn't happened yet. Mana base, only 20 lands, because essentially the game should kind of be over by turn 1. We do have 3 Hive of the Eye Tyrants, which is an alternate win condition as well, being able to crack in and take things from the graveyard. 7 Swamps, 1 Plains, 4 Bright Climb Pathways, mostly played on black, but sometimes played on white if you want to ephemerate, and then 4 Concealed Courtyard, which come into play tapped unless you control 2 or fewer lands, and then 1 Godless Shrine, just as an extra dual land. That's the deck. It's very fun to play when it works. When it doesn't work, it really, really doesn't work. But as I said, this deck was just meant to be built for fun. So let me know if you all enjoy it, and if you do, please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in my gameplay. No Grief, so this is a mulligan. We have Grief, we have Feign Death, we even have Obtruse Appropriation, so this is a keeper. And we'll put a swamp to the bottom. Well, I have to remember to go on to full control. They're on a Reanimator deck. Full control is control, just double checking. We will pitch the Dark Ritual. That resolves. And then we will Feign Death. We can stop full control. We will take their Grief. Now that they only have land, so we're not actually going to get anything else. That was a bit of a whiff, really. But we do have a 4/3 Menace. This is where they reanimate their own Grief. They'll take our Abstruse Appropriation. They have a look at the top card of our library. I imagine they'll saddle the Bronco. Hopefully they hit a land with it. I imagine they've got Shadow of Mortality. That's not a great hit for us. We draw a second Grief. They have red, so I imagine they have Fury as well. They're going to get down the Troll. They are. Well, let's see what their last card is. The new Goif. We've got to hold back. Yeah, the troll can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or greater. So, yeah, I think them being able to reanimate their own grief after we took it was a bit annoying. So, no grief. No grief. Grief. And yes, this is a good keep. We'll put back 2 lands we don't need. Get rid of... They both do the same. Go into full control. And then play Feign Death. So, they only have 2 lands. So Ulamog's not really a consideration. We are mono black, so we'll take the Messenger. And then we'll take Liberator as well. So we'll start cracking in. Our opponent didn't scoop. They are on a 5-turn clock. They evoke an Old Drifter to draw 2. A land short of Sheoldred. There it is. We'll play it on the white side just in case we do draw our Ephemerate. Liberator can't block Grief. Grief has Menace. And obviously they need to now remove both our creatures. There we go. Taking out their early playables with Grief obviously just really did them in. I'm surprised they didn't scope. And having those null elemental blasts, you're reliant on your opponent playing multicoloured cards, which they might not always be. Two Ephemerates, a Dark Ritual, so yeah, not keeping this. Or this. Or the, we do have a turn 2 Sheoldred, so sure, let's put back a Not Dead After All. They've got Yorin as a commander, so a Blink deck. Vexing Bauble is actually really good against Grief and all the elemental incarnations. They're on a mill deck as well. Turn 2 Shouldred obviously is quite powerful. But obviously if they have removal, then they've got removal. Yeah, we're pretty much out of this now. It's the issue with playing a not serious deck. Another Shieldred, we're only a turn away from playing. Only got 30 cards left in the library. And I imagine they have a counter spell. They don't. But do they have more removal? They do. I think that we are obviously beyond, this game is beyond us, but we'll see it out. $12 cards left. Obviously there are ways to make this deck better, but that wasn't really the point of this deck. Is that 3 Glimpse the Unthinkables? Yeah. 7 cards left. There we go. Milled out. And that's us done. So, oh, we've got the dream draw of Ephemerate Grief. So this is the keeper. Hopefully it's not a mirror match. So we play a Plains, get down Grief, we'll pitch Dark Ritual, and then we'll put on full control, and then we Ephemerate the Grief. So we look in their hand. This is the Artifact Affinity deck. So we will take the Frogmere for now. Also, we're going to get another trigger. Let's take the Thought Monitor. And we'll take the Kappa Cannoneer. The Grief now does have Summoning Sickness. But if they have a removal spell for it, we can Feign Death. They do have a lot of mana, but hopefully not much to spend it on. They are keeping something in their hand. Well, Mirror Enforcer, that's not great. Well, our creature has Menace, so we can still get in. We don't have much more action in our deck, but a Shoulder would be quite nice. Or maybe a second Grief. I don't think we had this much land. Well, I'll let them draw. If they keep the monitor back to double block, we can feign death the Grief again. Or not again, but to get into the hand again. But we are going to be losing this race, I think. They're thinking about something. They're not attacking, but we will. So we'll take our Thought Monitor and one of their tokens. Take another Springleaf Drum. Also, they can Ottawa the Grief. It's lucky drawing into another Thought Monitor. Yeah, draw 5 cards off that Thought Monitor. Yeah, I think we're done, really. Yeah. No point hanging about. So we have Grief. We have a Not Dead After All. We can pitch the Fatal Push. And we are on the play. Going to full control. Now we can take off full control. Well, we'll take the Grief. And we will take their Reanimate. So they've got 2 Fault Seizes, so they'll be able to take our Sheoldred. But we do have a Malika Rebirth in case they take out our grief. An Obtuse Appropriation would be good to play. They can flash in Bowmasters. They do have another Thoughtseize, so they can take one of our cards. They're just considering for now. Pitched a counter spell. So we can play the appropriation if they play something. Interesting they've gone face with that. They could have taken out the grief, although obviously we could have brought it back. It's interesting they're not playing the Thoughtseize. Fair enough. We do ping them with the Wicked roll. Then I'll just play it normally. I'll take their long goodbye. Yeah, they can take one of them. They took the appropriation. But obviously, Grief has Menace. And that is game. And there's a backup Grief if we needed it. I think this deck just it shows the potential power if you're on the play. You know, if we were on the draw, I think we would have basically just scooped them taking our grief, and then they're going to reanimate their own grief. I know they play reanimate, so you can reanimate the troll, but I prefer getting the grief back without losing life and putting a counter on it. Grief and a rebirth. We are on the draw though, so against the mirror match we are in trouble. Hopefully they're playing something else. And we can pitch a shouldered. They're thinking about whether to mulligan or not. Out of all that rebirth spells, Malika Rebirth is the worst. He doesn't put a counter or anything on Grief. Our opponent is slow rolling it. We drew a Dismember, so we'll pitch a shouldered. Turn on full control. Turn off full control now. Let's see what we're dealing with. Tribal Flames can deal with grief. We can dismember the NT. I'll take the Thoughtseize and probably the Tribal Flames. Hopefully we draw another rebirth spell. So if they're removal, we can get grief back. Oh, Ragavan with haste. They get a Dark Ritual. It could be worse. Didn't actually do anything. We'll swing in with the grief. And we can take out Ragavan at instant speed. That was the wrong one. That's the one I meant to cast. We'll pay mana and 2 life. There is another grief. But there's no point playing it now since we can't bring it back. So hopefully we draw another land. Opponent maybe on some weird energy deck. The lightning bolt's annoying as well. Well, they had a lightning bolt, so they could have killed Grief, and then we didn't have much to do. But see, they may not have known that, and their deck seemed a bit cobbled together. But a good result in the end. We have a turn 2 shouldered, so I'm going to keep this one as well. Hopefully our opponent doesn't have a spell pierce or something like that. And maybe we draw Grief. So turn 1 we'll play the Rebirth. So you know then we'll play the Concealed Courtyard. We really don't seem to draw Ephemerate at all. Well, there's the Grief. It's not turn 1, but I don't mind. We can pitch the Rebirth. They crack their fetch. And they bolt our face. It doesn't really matter. Full control on. Target them. And then we will not dead after all. Turn full control off. Stone Rain. I think we take Stone Rain and Brotherhood's End. They're not that far away from kicking the Ruin Blaster. But we can just Dark Ritual, play Sheoldred. Keep up Fatal Push and Dismember if we need it. In hindsight, it won't matter. Probably should have pitched the Fatal Push to Grief so we had another rebirth type effect because we know they had lightning bolts and things like that. But a good result even so. No Grief, so Mulligan. 2 Dismembers, but still no Grief. So we have Grief, we have Feign Death, and we have the land. So this is a keeper. We're going to have to turn 3, so we will put back 2 lands and the Fatal Push, and we'll pitch the Dark Ritual. Full control on. Feign Death. Full control off. So they are doing pretty much what we're doing. Well, they're just going to be able to kill Grief. So we'll take the swords. And it doesn't really matter. We'll take one of the Furies. Obviously, they'll just be able to pitch their Fable to the Fury and kill our Grief. Yeah. Us having to mulligan down to 4, basically. Just did us in. So we do have turn 2 Sheoldred, so I think I'll give this one a keep. Probably pay the Rebirth as a land. And maybe we draw a Grief. But at least we can protect our Sheoldred for a bit. I might do turn 3 Sheoldred instead, just so we have up Not Dead After All. But I think it depends what they play. They're on the Artifact Affinity deck. So what do we do? Is probably going to be far too slow. Vexing Bauble makes, well, basically puts an end to Grief. Yeah, that makes it... That's going to be tough to deal with. A Dismember would be quite good. Or a Fatal Push. Probably should have done that at instant speed on the second Terramander. But let's just swing in. They can block with the Vault Scourge, but they're not going to. Obviously, us gaining 2 a turn from Sheoldred will help offset their beatdown. But they'll be able to put that on, say, the Terramander. Or the Vault Scourge. Yeah, so them gaining 9 a turn just obviously would mean it wouldn't take long for us to lose. We have Grief, we have Ephemerate as well. So yeah, I think we give this one a go. That might put paid to our Grief plan, but we'll pitch Feign Death. Full control on. It works with Ephemerate because it doesn't require the creature to die first. Well, we would have taken, what was it, Molten Collapse and Ragavan. They can keep their Blood Moon. Hello Magic fans, welcome back to the wrap up. So we played 16 games of this deck with a 37% win rate, which sounds bad, and it is, but A, it's better than I thought it was going to be, and B, if you'll see, we actually played over double the amount of times on the draw, which is frankly not, it makes it seem like it's not random. And our win rate on the draw is a lot lower because, you know, when our game plan is based around getting into opponent's hand and taking their best cards, when they've already played maybe a really good card, it kind of defeats the point of it. And if we're playing against the mirror match and they grief us, then, well, you know, we are just on a hiding to nothing. So I think if those on the play and on the draw games were more even, or the times were more even, we'd have a much better win rate. And a few of our losses were based on having to mulligan down to nothing, basically, which I know it's a weakness of the deck. But, you know, it wasn't like someone beat us, it more we just beat ourselves. But, yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised. Some people just scooped straight away, which is understandable. You know, some people did. Some people were beaten down, essentially, because, you know, having a 4-3 menace on turn 1 is hard to deal with. And because of the amount of Feign Death type effects we have in our deck, chances are we're going to have more. And if they remove Grief, we can just get it back again. So there is that. And there is also the, you know, potential of turn 2 or turn 3 Sheoldred, which is also very hard for them to deal with. So a great deck. I will definitely be looking at it again to rebuild properly. There is a deck flying around with like Reanimate and Troll of Khazad-dûm, and, you know, not just focusing on Grief. But I'll definitely have a play of that. I also want to do a Rakdos version with Grief and Fury, the red elemental incarnation, because that can just wipe out boards if you can bring it back. So we'll see when I get around to doing that. But I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.